And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, that's enough.
Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
Look, we're all part of the same team here.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Welcome to the program as we're loaded up for the next couple of hours. Danny Watt, very active on Twitter, Tennessee's athletic director. Do you love it, like it, hate it? Alex Golesh is trying to get Tennessee to play South Florida in place of Nebraska, who Tennessee just canceled that matchup with. Should UT oblige, or do you even want to give Alex Golesh any pub, the former Tennessee offensive coordinator who's doing a fine job at South Florida and may have been part of the brains behind Tennessee's offensive explosion in 2022. This day in Tennessee sports history, I'm upset, incredibly upset with the NCAA because of the Andrej Karic situation. He will not be able to return for another season. Also, we'll have a Tennessee spring practice preview. We'll talk some running backs. Stat of the day as well. Tennessee beats Texas A&M on the men's side. Lady Vols get ugly win against Florida. So as a whole, as long as your name's not Andrej Karic, it was a pretty good weekend for the Vols.
Yeah, it was. Very good weekend for the Vols. Everything was working out well for them until Sunday. Now, depending, and we're going to get this, we're going to kind of get into debate on this in a minute, but some people may have felt disappointed about the Nebraska series being canceled. We'll see how people feel about that. But in terms of actually in-play action, if you're a Vol fan, you had a good weekend.
Okay, today's tough question is now brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Good news, bad news situation with the Nebraska series canceled. You could look at this from one perspective, as that's more compelling television. Clearly, Nebraska is closer to Ohio State than Kent State. I think we could agree with that. That was an embarrassment of a game. Don't need to see that again. But the flip side of it is, and Jimmy Himes has pointed this out, he joins us every Wednesday. He's pointed this out several times before. The committee members have not made a declaration, Caleb, that this playoff is going to be about anything other than just wins. Now, they'll change and roll off every 2 years. But right now, why not have an easier schedule, even if your fans don't particularly like it, just to win 10 games and more than likely get in the playoff?
Yeah, and for those who missed it, Nebraska canceled the series in 2026 and 2027 with Tennessee. The reason being the year that they would have visited Tennessee, they have reduction in stadium capacity that year because there's renovation. So they want 8 home games to make up for the revenue loss. That's where that all came from. I think Nebraska did themselves and Tennessee a favor. And Tennessee should thank Nebraska for taking the political hit, if you will, for the taking the publicity hit to cancel this series. Because I'm with you. The committee last year did not care about strength of schedule. They gave no value to it whatsoever. On top of that, we know that 2026, the playoff format's going to change. There's been negotiations about that. We'll probably learn more this week. I think all the presidents and athletic directors and conference commissioners are meeting this week about that. But we know the playoff format's going to change. But in every proposal I've seen, I haven't seen one that's going to increase the value of marquee non-conference games. I haven't seen one in which a marquee non-conference game does anything for you. So, I mean, until the committee or whoever sets this up decides to incentivize that, I wouldn't play them. Sorry, I'm playing 4 Kent States every year until they tell me otherwise. And people can complain about that. People can whine about that. People can say it's cheating the fans. Tennessee's not cheating their fans. The college football the people who run college football are cheating the fans by incentivizing Tennessee to do that. I think Tennessee fans would rather see their team make the playoff than play marquee games, but that's just me.
Okay, here's my take on this situation. You're right, but I think there's something to be said for. Let's look at it pragmatically, not what I prefer, not what you prefer. I'd prefer to see a Tennessee-Nebraska game during the season as opposed to having to write about Kent State. But I understand that's a selfish reason for doing it. However, let's look at it pragmatically. Did this Tennessee football team have too big of a head because of what they did in September and what they did against lesser opponents? You pointed out that the average offense is about second in the SEC if you count all games, and it is about seventh in the SEC. So I can't help but wonder pragmatically, Caleb, I'm not going to argue with you about whether or not they get in the committee. We can get to that, but I'm more along the lines of, does that make you a better football team as long as you stay healthy? But that's my big caveat.
Yeah, I mean, and I get you try to strike that balance. It's you see this in college basketball where teams, when they schedule hard non-conference at the beginning of the year, like what Rick Barnes loves to do, is he, like, even the smaller schools that you're going to beat, he wants the best schools from those conferences that he could possibly get, because he wants to find different ways that his team's going to be challenged. I don't necessarily think, though, Tennessee was feeling themselves too much. I think they were when they went to Arkansas, but they had beaten Oklahoma before that. Remember, they beat Oklahoma and then they went to their bye. So I can't sit there and say they were feeling themselves too much, because it's not like, Oklahoma was no slouch. They weren't great, but they weren't Kent State. I think that they were feeling themselves a bit. I think Lance Hurd wasn't healthy. And Arkansas, that's just a tough place to play if you're not fully prepared to go there. And so I think I don't have a problem with playing easy games. And I know what you're talking about, but Dave, they played Georgia in September this year. So there's in 2020. They play Georgia September 2025. I'm sure they'll play a tough game in 2026. So I think at this point it's more about, for me personally, it's about showing up the NCAA and the College Football Playoff Committee and the people who run this sport and embarrassing them.
Dylan says, as much as we hate playing the Kent States, I'd rather have a soft get-right game early than to have to play a Michigan in the Big House on week 2. General Ursus, though, sees this completely as different. I'm disappointed that the Nebraska games are canceled. Danny White is being childish about this, considering he backed Tennessee out of the Army and BYU game. USC and Notre Dame are available. Go get them. So we'll get to our poll question, which is what, Caleb?
What do you make of Nebraska canceling the series with Tennessee? Soft or no big deal? Why play big non-SEC games?
Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott.
All right, so we're going to get into this a little bit more with Danny White. But first, I want to talk specifically about this game and this series. That's two traditional powers. And Tennessee, because they're in the South, should be better than that other traditional power that wears red. So to me, Nebraska is kind of like the perfect opponent to have. You should beat them. They're not bolstered by juiced up walk-ons anymore. And they're a name.
Glad you come to my side on that, by the way.
I know they're a name win. They could go 6-6 and you would still say, well, look back at the Nebraska game. Tennessee won that game. That was a big win. Would they not?
Yeah, just like the Oklahoma game this past year. We tout Tennessee beating Oklahoma, even though Oklahoma was 6-6, I think. Maybe 7-5. But yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it's a risk, though. It's the type of game. It's also like the Arkansas game. You go to Nebraska, you travel up there, those rowdy fans. Josh Heupel has experience there. Josh Heupel had the year Oklahoma won the national title, although I think that was in Norman when they beat Nebraska that year. But still, he knows the Oklahoma-Nebraska, the old rivalry that used to exist out there. But I think going out there to Nebraska, you don't want to lose that game.
See, I'm of the mindset that if I were a committee member, if you were in the top 25 and you went on the road and lost, that would not affect your vote in my mind at all. If Tennessee played Nebraska, and let's say they're 18. Okay, so Nebraska's 18, Tennessee's 12. I'm just throwing that out there. That should not be a loss as long as you don't get blown out.
Okay, and that's a fair argument. Tennessee's road woes under Josh Heupel, though, makes it possible that they do get blown out. I mean, we've watched enough of them to know that they have just there's some road games that they're just not in sometimes under Josh Heupel because they struggle so badly. So I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, I all in all, I get the principle of wanting to play them, but this is like why I talked about benching your starters during the conference championship game last year. Part of this for me, Dave, is about showing up the commissioners and the presidents who have set up this system that have really disincentivized you to play or win marquee games. I mean, they just have. And that's a problem with the sport.
So your thoughts, we want to hear from you on the message board. Hit that like button, the thumbs up button. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. So what's the perfect opponent for Tennessee in a home and home? This was a home and home, right?
Yeah, this was a home and home.
Okay.
I don't think they should do home and homes. I think they should straight up be playing 4 Kent States until the format changes. Play 4 Kent States, get your check by playing them at home, and call it a day. They should not bother with neutral site games or any marquee games until the committee decides to fix what they've been doing. And there is absolutely no incentive. And if the new format comes, by the way, and the auto bids are coming, which seems more likely, where the SEC and Big Ten just have auto bids in, and then there's no value in the non-conference games, and you move to 9 SEC games at that point. Now, three non-conference games. Don't play anybody. Just play to tune yourself out. I'm
fine with 9 and 3. 3 being pretty much nobody's, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not cool with 8 and 4. I mean, just that split up. That's 4 games on the schedule. That's a third of the schedule.
That's not my fault.
Oh, I know, but can you imagine the NFL if 6 games were essentially just blowouts and consequences?
You mean like how Tom Brady got to do with the AFC East for his whole career when the AFC East was mostly horrible?
The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford.
What about like a Wake Forest?
They just had Dave Clawson just retired from there. Funny enough. I mean, I wouldn't do a home and home with them. You could come to Knoxville, Wake. I'm not going to Wake.
Okay, what about the Charlotte matchup? Do you hate that?
Yeah, I want him in Neyland. I want that Neyland Stadium money. You come to Neyland Stadium. Until they fix this, I'm playing 4 non-conference home games against Cupcakes every single year.
So this from Dylan. Honestly, I feel like the best opponent is one we're already going to play. Syracuse, a team that will challenge us, but we should still win handily. Yeah, I would say that's comparable. Syracuse and Nebraska, because if Nebraska slipped as much as they have.
I agree. Syracuse is comparable, and they're actually going to be a pretty good team. I don't think Tennessee should have been playing them this year. I think, again, they should cancel that series now and give – I'm dead serious. Go as cupcake as possible until the committee fixes this issue.
Interesting. Our friends at Rick Terry Jewelry Design, they want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com, RickTerryJewelry.com. And if we can pull up Danny White's tweet. Yes.
I actually want to address a comment from General Ursus because he's making a very good point. I don't know if you're a man or woman, General Ursus. Sorry.
You're allowed to ask that anymore.
But you see my point, but when you're paying a talent fee on ticket prices, you want the bang for your buck. General Ursus, I get your point on that. But let me ask you a question, and you can respond on the message board. Would you, as someone paying a talent fee, would you rather get more bang for your buck in marquee regular season games, or would you rather see maximize the chances of seeing Tennessee in the college football playoff as a Tennessee fan? I mean,
I just can't believe we're not going to have the Notre Dame matchups. That's just sad, isn't it?
It is, but I hope they fix it. This is a challenge to the committee and a challenge to the leaders of the conferences. They have set up this system, not me.
Okay.
So, and General Ursus is a guy. So,
okay. What do you think about Danny White? He got a little defensive on his Twitter account, Tennessee's athletic director, about somebody claiming that Tennessee canceled the series with Nebraska.
Well, it wasn't that someone said. So Pete Thamel initially reported Tennessee and Nebraska together are canceling their upcoming series, which was scheduled for 2026 in Lincoln and 2027 in Knoxville. And Thamel did report right after that. A driver of the move was Nebraska wanting 8 home games in 2027 when they expected reduced stadium capacity because of renovations. Danny White tweets out in response, correction, Tennessee is not canceling this series. Nebraska did. We are very disappointed that they didn't want to play these games, especially this close to 2026.
Okay. Is he too brash on the social media, on the Twitter?
I think he is. I'm going to say it. I think he is. And he's too brash for reasons that I think were kind of underrated. Now, again, when he was athletic director at UCF, I got it. You're at UCF. You're trying to build UCF. You're trying to be brash. You're trying to, what was it where he officially declared UCF 2017 national championship and they actually hung a banner for it?
Yes.
Yeah, I get that. That is your job at UCF. Okay. But you're not at UCF anymore. You're at Tennessee. And when you're at the Tennessee level, you're no longer, put it this way. When you're at UCF, you're that low-level member of Congress that just wants to draw attention to themselves all the time. But when you're at Tennessee, you're like the House minority whip or the majority whip. Your job is to literally cobble up all the votes and build consensus to pass stuff. So you have to build allies everywhere. You know what I mean? So Tennessee is one of those schools in that position because Tennessee's always going to have to stay ahead of the changing moves in college football. And I don't think it's smart to just publicly go to war with any blue bloods because you don't like something they did. And I
sent you a tweet. Can we pull it up? We can pull this from Danny White, and he comments on, or other commenters talk about how much they love him. Caleb, this is going to fly right in the face of what you just said. I think the fans absolutely do love it. And there's one, if you scroll down, he says, a fan says, "Hi, Danny. I love you, Danny. I would die for you, Danny. Kiss me, Danny." That's some pretty strong fandom right there when you're asking for a kiss and say, "I would die for you." I think he's beloved. And I don't think that that's going to change. And I don't think it needs to. I think Tennessee needs to be brash. They're not Alabama or Notre Dame. They don't need to sit back and let the game come to them. Go get it like you did with Nico.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask the poll question. Is Danny White too brash on Twitter? I'm going to say yes, dial it back. And then I'm going to say no, punch back. Or I'll just say no. How about that? Yes, dial it back, or just no. So here's my point. The fans do love it. But Dave, the fans loved Lane Kiffin picking fights with everybody when he was at Tennessee in 2009. Remember that? Yes. And I think a lot of people felt... this is where, put it this way, the reason that wasn't smart when Lane Kiffin was doing it is every now and then at certain points, once you're at Tennessee's level, you're going to need some allies in certain moments, aren't you? Whether you're in a fight.
Do you think Alabama's ever looking out for Tennessee?
I think in certain cases you need allies for certain things if you guys have mutual interest in something. Look, let's just go here. Let's just go straight here. What if... I'm doing an apocalyptic scenario, but just bear with me here, Dave. You know, I know you're going to say this would never happen, but let's just pretend it could. What if, because of the Big Ten SEC contracts that I keep talking about, what if the SEC schools get relegated to almost second-tier status in 5-6 years? And what if, when the contracts are up and the grant of rights are up with the SEC, a few of those SEC schools start jockeying to try to go to the Big Ten? don't you want Nebraska as an ally at that point?
Well, possibly. General Ursus, he's with me, and we're basically flying with emotion. General Ursus and I are. We're not using any pragmatic thinking here because Caleb's right at the end of the day. But I'd rather see Tennessee play Notre Dame than beat the beat out of a bunch of UT Martins. If we're all going to do that, is play a bunch of cupcakes, and I'm not wasting my time watching. I got better things to do. I do think this could have a negative impact on the sport long term if they don't fix this. Get it to 9 games. Do something. You also could bring more teams in so that teams aren't as worried about losing a game like this. But I think that part of the non-conference games are what makes college football so special. I thought that Ohio State scene was just incredible. If you had anything close to that like Nebraska, don't tell me it wouldn't help Tennessee in recruiting with a home game and a game out there. Now, I will say this, because I covered recruiting so long. I'm going to lean towards being in the Atlanta area and the Charlotte area. We can agree on that, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's why Tennessee accepts neutral site games there all the time.
Yeah, I don't know why they went to Nebraska in the first place. I don't think you back out because a word's your word. And Tennessee didn't, apparently, but Nebraska did. But why in the world did they want to go to Nebraska in the first place?
That's a great question. I think because, look, part of this is I think recruiting is so national now. And you know this, Dave. I mean, let's talk about Tennessee in the 80s and the early 90s for a minute. We've talked about how many times they played national games where they went to places where they're probably the recruiting wasn't fertile, but the selling point wasn't the recruiting, or it wasn't the fertile recruiting ground. It was them being on national TV when other SEC teams weren't. And maybe they're thinking that way. But I mean, I guess look, I'm with you that these non-conference games are a huge part of college football. The point is, you know what it's like? You know the intentional walk in baseball? And how how many times do you think fans were cheated back in the day when Barry Bonds or Mark McGwire or whatever got intentionally walked like 4 times in a game and they came to see Barry Bonds hit? You can't blame the team for doing it. I'm walking him every time, honestly. But at the same time, baseball needs to set a rule in place that punishes you a little bit harder if you keep intentionally walking the same player.
Okay, where would you play? Where is there an area of the country that could get you motivated to play? Are you saying you wouldn't play Atlanta, not Atlanta, but you wouldn't play in Atlanta or in Charlotte? Are you going so far as to say that?
Yeah, I don't think that type of presence has the impact on recruiting that it used to anymore. I don't think just seeing the team there is the same that it used to be. I think it's a lot. I think it's a lot harder to, or it's a lot easier to get to people. I mean, let's think about like this. One of the reasons in football, this is a funny story, but Memphis was one of the few group of 5 schools in football back in the day that used to be able to get home and homes with big SEC schools. Why would they do that? Because there'd be this deal where if we can get home and homes with them in football, we'll give you home and homes in basketball. So all these schools could come into Memphis to try to recruit basketball. Does Tennessee have to play Memphis to recruit Memphis, or can they just go to Memphis and recruit Memphis?
Just go to Memphis. Are you talking about from a football perspective or basketball perspective?
Both. From both. Yeah, they don't have to play them. They can just go there.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be tougher to get Memphis kids in basketball. Is that what you're asking me?
Well, but these schools would want to do home and homes with Memphis in basketball so they could hope to like pluck one kid out of Memphis every now and then. Like how Todd Day would get plucked out or Tony Harris would get plucked out, JP Prince, those guys. That's why they would agree to the home and homes in football. And I don't think that matters as much anymore. Like, I don't think Tennessee has to go play Georgia Tech in Atlanta to go get Atlanta kids.
Yeah,
I think they can just go to Atlanta.
So social media and everything has shrunk the world is basically what you're saying.
Yeah, the world is flat. There's a book on that. And so, like...
Not really, Kanye.
No,
don't get that started. Is the world flat? Today's poll question.
No, I don't mean flat like that. I mean flat that we are a totally global society now. And just everybody's more connected than ever, but also more isolated, funny enough. But still, like, the regional geographical differences are just not a thing as much anymore. So that's why I just don't think it's as big of a deal. Now, to General Ursus's point, as you have it out, you love Danny White, but you wouldn't die for the man. I get your point, General Ursus. I'm just saying I think Danny White could dial it back a little bit.
Okay, David said he's going to give a shout out to John Pennington, who we love, made a great point that the hypocrisy of Danny White being mad about the cancellation was he canceled the Army and BYU games on short notice. That's true. And don't tell me that Danny White didn't have a notion this was coming down the pike.
Yeah, I mean, Danny White, again, this is what I mean. The Nebraska is a PR move. Because you're right, he did cancel both of those games. And by the way, I defended him for canceling both of those games, particularly the Army game. The dumbest scheduling move ever done in the history of football was Tennessee scheduling Air Force the week before they played Florida in 2006. You remember that game, Dave? And
I do.
You know, that's the game where Inky Johnson suffered his career life-threatening injury and Justin Harrell was out for the year. If Tennessee doesn't have to play Air Force that week, they probably beat Florida the week after that. You don't schedule service academies that run the triple option. That is that you don't want to go and face that in the middle of a season. It's just dumb. And sorry if that's unpatriotic. You can call me unpatriotic. I don't really care. It's not smart for your program. So I gave Danny White a ton of credit for backing out of that game. And by the way, Philip Fulmer was trying to back out of that game too before Danny White when he was athletic director, because even he understood that. So but you're right. It is hypocritical. But I think Danny White what he's doing is he's thinking meticulously about the best interest of Tennessee. And I appreciate him for doing that. I just don't think this is the smartest thing to do, the brashness. I think you need to build some allies every now and then.
Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. Go to facebook.com, Sports Treasures TN, Sports Treasures TN. And then you had a former Vol who wanted to get involved. Are you ready for What the H?
Let's go.
And it's brought to you by our friends at Work Trucks.
What the H?
Wow, I never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Was it in poor taste for Alex Golesh to say, hey, you can play South Florida? I used to be a coordinator there during the good old days. Was that in poor taste, or, Caleb, was that par for the course?
I think it was par for the course, because I think Alex Golesh is, again, he's doing what you should do if you're at a school like South Florida, and what Danny White was right to do when he was at a school like UCF. South Florida has, for those who don't know, South Florida and UCF actually used to have a big rivalry. And South Florida was on the rise first as a program. They got into the Big East while UCF was just getting into the Conference USA. And then UCF made a few investments and changes. And now UCF is the more big-time program than South Florida. So South Florida is trying to get back on UCF's level. That's a real jockeying position there to be the fourth power program in the state of Florida. And UCF's winning that battle. Alex Golesh would love Tennessee to go to the Bay, as he said. And here's the crazy part. I think they should.
It's not gonna happen.
Can I play a 3D chess game with you, Dave, real quick? Tennessee should schedule a home and home with USF and do everything they can to help prop up USF as a program. Because again, UCF is getting big as a program. The more programs that are big time in Florida, the better for Tennessee, because the more watered down recruiting is for Florida, for the Gators at that moment.
Okay. Well, wait a second. Prop them up. No, you need to go down there and beat them as bad as you can to show that it wasn't Alex Golesh's offense. It was Josh Heupel's offense.
Oh, you still beat them, but just playing them in a home and home could help South Florida build its program. The Bobby Bowden method. You know, Florida State built itself up as a program. They played everybody on the road and got the hell beat out of them, but Bobby Bowden didn't care because he was still able to recruit in certain areas and get the program national television exposure. So
easy about the propping up thing.
I think you prop up guys. If you're a Tennessee fan, you should root for every school in Florida to be legitimately good, because the more Florida schools are good, the more the recruiting is watered down in that state. And that's
let's ask the question. What the H is that in poor taste by Alex Golesh? Do you like him a little bit less despite what he did at Tennessee in 2022? We'll ask you that question, brought to you by Work Trucks. Trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle, Work Trucks. Process quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. Cargo vans, utility bodies with an app-hide work bodies installed. Pickup trucks of all sizes and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Service industry, remember Work Trucks. Work Trucks carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham. They are fantastic. Check them out. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. David said Golesh gunning for Heupel's job. Sure he is. That would never work out because you wouldn't go to the well that you would just, if you got rid of Heupel. I mean, it would have to be a situation where Heupel goes to the NFL or something, right?
Yeah, probably. What if Golesh is what if he wants to make the statement that it's his offense, not Heupel's? He's not gunning for Heupel's job. He's gunning for Heupel recruits.
Oh, well, I think he's trying to make that argument right now, isn't he?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. So I would do it. Also, a presence in Florida doesn't really hurt. Josh Heupel's got connections down there. A presence in Tampa, not a bad place. I mean, I know I just said that doesn't matter as much anymore, but I would consider a home and home with USF. I wouldn't rule that out. And South Florida is, and Unsung brings up a good point. They've played Bama and Miami. Like, they love to play like top tier schools down there, and they're trying their best to like get themselves out there. So I think that you're talking about a coach who, look, let's call it what it is. What have we talked about in the past, Dave? Alex Golesh was the creativity behind a lot of Josh Heupel's offense. Now, it's Josh Heupel's offense and it's Josh Heupel's system. But I think Alex Golesh's creativity was the sizzle on top of it. It was the seasoning, basically. And right now, the offense has no seasoning. So it's cooked well, but it has no seasoning. And I think that, need a little bit of spice on it. And so I think Alex Golesh gave the spice. And I don't think there's anybody to give the spice right now. And I think it's a problem. And I think he knows that. Now, Alex Golesh is also, look, he went 7-6 2 years in a row. I think that South Florida thought they were going to take a step forward this past year, and they didn't. So I think there may be some concerns about him as head coach material going forward. But he also played a tougher schedule. He played 2 top 10 non-conference teams in Alabama and Miami. But I don't know if it's in poor taste. I think it's I think if anything, Alex Golesh would like to show up Nebraska. What if he's gunning for the Nebraska job?
Well, he might, but I will tell you this. I did think it was in poor taste because you do it right after when obviously the athletic director is sensitive to that. The athletic director gave the coaching staff a chance at Tennessee when that was a little bit of a reach higher, wasn't it?
Yep, it was.
I just don't think you treat people like that publicly on social media. That's just me.
So you think Golesh was showing up Danny White?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. I haven't thought about that.
Maybe the two have a really playful relationship, but it just read like that to me.
Does this strike you more as a promo for his program tweet, or does this strike you as a Lane Kiffin troll tweet?
50-50, a little bit of both.
Okay.
Very
50-50.
Kiffin-like. Yes.
Very Kiffin. Okay. All right. So you think Alex Golesh is a miniature Lane Kiffin going forward?
Well, nobody's quite Lane, right? I mean, 15 years after your divorce, you typically don't post pictures of your ex-wife in Oxford. So nobody's quite Lane, but let's put it this way. He's more, maybe this is a poll question. He's more Lane than he is Heupel. Did you say that?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so Alex Golesh is more like, okay, that's a good one. Alex Golesh is more like,
we'll get that up there. Brought to you by our friends at Double D Piping Fire Protection Contractors. They provide around-the-clock service, protecting their customers' lives and properties all the time. Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
A guy with a lot of jobs, but this one is the most important.
This is not government work. As such, I treat it with care and attention.
Until someone else calls. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
A quick recruiting note before we take a look at that poll question. Hezekiah Harris, an edge rusher. He's a 4-star edge rusher committed to Auburn. He will now take an official visit on June the 20th to Knoxville. So it appears as if Tennessee is in on that, and that's brought to you by On3. And Caleb, I just don't see commits being nearly as strong as they used to be.
No, they're not nearly as strong. We'll keep tabs on that, but I agree. They're not nearly the same level. But we'll have to see how that one goes.
All right. It is time for stat of the day. Yes.
Let's stick on this for a minute with the Alex Golesh talk for a second. Because, 70% say he's more like Josh Heupel. 30% say he's more like Lane Kiffin. I agree with most of you guys. Lane Kiffin is kind of just one of a guy. But Unsung brings up rumors where Golesh and Heupel butted heads a lot in practice. Unsung, honestly, my response to that is good. Don't you want your coordinators butting heads or your coaches butting heads in practice with philosophies?
All the time.
I mean,
you want Alex Golesh to say, no, we're not doing that 2 tight end set. And you want Josh Heupel to say, no, we are, because that's working. Yeah. You want that feedback at all times. And I still say, and I sound like an old fuddy-duddy at times, but the John Chavis, David Cutcliffe battles were famous, but it was more over personnel than philosophy. Obviously, they coached opposite sides of the ball, a defense coordinator and offense coordinator. But Caleb, there's no question in my mind that you're better off with a good open set of minds that are providing feedback. Right now, what do they have with Joey Halsley?
They have a yes, sir, no, sir.
Yeah, it sure looks like that, doesn't it?
Yeah. You guys, a great book I encourage you guys to read is Doris Kearns Goodwin, Team of Rivals, about Abraham Lincoln's cabinet. Abraham Lincoln obviously felt a certain way about things when he was president, but he actually had Confederate sympathizers in his cabinet because he wanted to hear every single side before he took an issue, before he took a stance. And and it's that makes you better. It makes you better if you understand the side that you're opposing. A lot of times.
Stat of the day is now. It's brought to you by the Hemp House. No, it's not. Oh, it did the wrong bumper. Let's go to this day in Tennessee sports history.
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
Making you think about it today, Caleb. This day in Tennessee sports history is...
on this day, back in 1973, Tennessee basketball scored a big top 25 win over Alabama. They beat the Crimson Tide 72-71 in Thompson-Boling Arena. That Tennessee team was led by future NBA center Len Kosmaiski, but they also had Mike Edwards, John Snow, Larry Robinson, Rodney Wood.
Mike Edwards robbed a convenience store.
No, not that Mike Edwards.
Oh.
That's not that one. I don't think that Mike Edwards was born yet. But Alabama at the time was ranked number 18. And it had been a bit of a disappointing year for Tennessee. Honestly, they started the year ranked number 14 and didn't live up to the conference title from the previous year. But that was a bright spot in an otherwise down year for Tennessee basketball.
David, I completely agree with you. He says, if you never get challenged, you never think you have to change anything. I completely agree with that. And if you, sorry, I played the wrong one twice. I said, we don't have a bunch of people, a bunch of feedback. Now we have a bunch of people that just want to go along. You talk about the culture. At what point is the culture not good for Tennessee if everybody's just getting along? You want to get mad at everybody. You want to have fights occasionally in practice. Heupel doesn't allow fights. Doesn't appear to allow a lot of feedback philosophically. It's not where you want to be.
No, not at all. I mean, you want this speaks to, it's a problem, but it speaks to Heupel's, I would say, maybe arrogance a little bit, honestly. He thinks a little too highly of himself. A lot of coaches do. Very coaching.
I don't think it's arrogant. I wrote a column about this, so I know you read it, but I think it's paranoia for the way things went down at Oklahoma.
So that's right. He'd
rather keep people in house that he trusts than to go out there and, let's say, a Dave Clawson type of hire, which was a stupid hire.
Yeah, but for Josh Heupel to think that way, one, he's acting like his offense isn't going to get out, and it is. It's out everywhere now. So and two, he needs other voices to push back because his offense was at its best when he had other voices. I think Heupel, we've talked about this. The only coach who was as good as his arrogance on one side of the ball was Steve Spurrier. I don't think Steve Spurrier trusted an offensive mind, and he didn't need to. Did he? It was him and him only who ran that offense.
I'm not sure I wouldn't put Lane in that category.
You think maybe? I think, well, no, because Lane has been pushed by other people before. I mean, Lane and Nick Saban both changed their offensive philosophy together when they were at Alabama.
I was just along the lines of an offensive mind in general.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I agree. But even Nick Saban, though, wanted other voices in the room for his defensive coaching, didn't he? It wasn't like he just...
No, but he ultimately knew Thursday night he could tear up a game plan and redo the whole thing. And he did that on several occasions.
And he took staff. And he would take over the offense sometimes in front of the coordinator, just be like, no, I'm taking over the offense at this point.
The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. 2 minutes then, coming up, Andrej Karic did not get his waiver, and I'm incensed. Off the Hook Sports.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Ginger Power, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Bank on It brought to you by Commercial Bank, Life Made Better. I ask you this question, member FDIC. Go to cbtn.com. Very easy to find. Now, the link is right down below. Caleb, I want to focus more on the NCAA's decision. I don't understand philosophically, and I was talking to T. Scott Jones about this recently at Banks and Jones, show represented by Banks and Jones. As he and I were discussing, why can't, and you and I discussed it too, I believe, why can't a player come back from the NFL and play a couple more years? Because I'm telling you, it's going to get to that. I know that sounds insane, but you just have to have the player that needs the money bad enough, and he's going to come back to college, even though that would be an ego shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you need the guy who he needs the money, and you need the players to be university employees, which they're going to be by probably 2026 or 2027. They're just going to be paid straight through the university. So at the end of the day, constitutionally, and Caleb, this is why I love being on with you, is you have such a good knowledge of the Constitution and the government. Tell me how you can have a rule that you can't come back to college and play football. It just doesn't seem American to me. I know it sounds weird to say that, but it doesn't seem American.
Well, the argument would be, even though they'll be employees, the argument would be you're under temp contracts for these. So, and then once that contract is up if they become employees. So that's how they could legally get around this. So think about like a lot of like projects, particularly like in infrastructure and things like that around the country that private companies do, they're temp contracts with employees. It's like, okay, we are hiring you to work on this project for a specific amount of time, and then we don't need you anymore, so you can go. And that's how the NCAA would get around their eligibility rules, is it would be kind of like a temp contract situation. Like you're there for 4 or 5, whatever years, and then you can go. I think the NCAA probably could have won their junior college ruling with Diego Pavia. They still might, by the way. That's still going through the courts as of right now. Diego Pavia's just won. I don't think they're fighting it as hard. There's a fair argument that with the junior college situation, and you've covered junior college, Dave, that like you're so easily falling through the cracks that it shouldn't really count towards any sort of eligibility. So Diego Pavia is not making an argument against eligibility. He's just making an argument about junior college counting against eligibility. Andrej Karic's situation is he wants a medical red shirt because one of the years he played, he suffered a season-ending injury 5 plays into his 5th game. So technically he exceeded the 4-game limit for the red shirt. And he would say,
so given that, I think he's got a better argument than Pavia.
Oh, I think so too. I mean, I just think it's like, I think it's perfectly reasonable to look at what Karic did and say, you can't exercise some discretion in NCAA and say 5 plays in. Like, you can't exercise.
You remember the kicker for Florida that got 7 years?
Jeff Chandler? Was that his name?
How in the world did that ever happen?
I don't even remember. Daniel Cobb from Auburn got a 6-year of eligibility too. I remember 1 year, but
I don't think I've ever heard of a 7.
Yeah, I remember his, but which is funny because had Florida used Jeff Chandler in 1998, they probably at least get to a second overtime against Tennessee instead of
Bank on It brought to you by Commercial Bank. You will have a guy that will stay at the college level for a decade at some point playing football. Bank on It brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
Caleb, I saw you roll your eyes. Did you not like my last assertion?
I don't think that's going to happen. Somebody is going to sue and try that, but I think once all this gets sorted out, the NCAA will able to make the case that you're technically under temp contracts. And if they become like university employees, it's kind of like a third-party contract, basically, at that point. And so I think that that's not technically an antitrust violation. Diego Pavia is arguing an antitrust violation because he's saying that the NCAA's junior college rules against your eligibility violated his ability to maximize his profit value. I still largely side actually with the NCAA in that one because they can make the argument that without that junior college, you wouldn't have made it to Vanderbilt or to get the money anyway. So they could probably make that case. So I'm not so sure that's necessarily an antitrust violation specifically, but we'll see with that one. Eligibility is, I'm pretty sure, like almost certainly not an antitrust violation.
You're going to have, though, you're going to have a situation where somebody does challenge it. And how much faith do you have in the NCAA to hold up their end of the legal deal? I mean, it's almost like you're arguing for the right thing, but your boxer has a glass jaw.
I mean, that's probably true. The NCAA has, and they've lost case after case. This will be sorted out because we already see the breakaways happening, and we already see, like, look, Congress is already getting involved. There's going to be some sort of legislation passed to make, and then something where these universities become university employees. And I know people keep saying, here's the thing that people don't understand. They don't want Congress to get involved. But guys, Congress is already involved. The whole reason NIL exists is because of a law passed by Congress. So you can't say Congress can't get involved when it's like people are relying on laws passed by Congress to do this.
You're going to have a union to rep these kids. And I know a lot of people are anti-union, but this is not the typical union that's fighting for. We had a joke at the News Sentinel that because of their union, you could walk in there and shoot a person and 5 people would have to see it for you to get fired. So that was not 1 or 2 or 3. But that was a situation where the union was fighting for jobs for people that didn't work very hard. I don't think that's going to be the case with football.
Well, with something like the NCAA, where there's no competition, like you have to have a union in that situation because it's not like the players can go play for another organization. You know what I mean? Like they're kind of stuck under this. So yeah, they have to be unionized. This is the problem with WWE. I mean, like the wrestlers there. It's almost to me illegal that they're not unionized because it's not like they can go wrestle for another organization. I mean,
well, you could. They don't have that Nitro and all that stuff.
That was WCW back in. You could have made the argument back in the day when there were all these regional promotions. WWE is the only game in town now. So there's no real competitor to WWE. So because there's no real competitor, it should almost be required that they're unionized legally. Otherwise, to me, it's an antitrust violation on its own. That's going to be the NCAA. Like, they almost legally have to be unionized if they become employees. So, it's going to be interesting how this all plays out. I know the new administration, as they have exempted Title IX from that, which is going to help the players unionize a little bit more. David Speak says, when are they going to decide if they're going to take the college part out of it? Well, here's what's going to happen is they're going to sell you will play for the college and the college sells the naming rights. The college sells the naming rights and then they get a deal that because you're wearing the naming rights jersey, you can go to class. That's how this is going to work.
I don't think they're going to be going to class in 3 years, guys.
Oh, you won't have to go to class, but you have the right. Colleges they'll hold a scholarship for you if you want to. Does that make sense?
Yes.
They'll hold a scholarship if you choose to go to class, but if you choose not to go to class, yeah, you're just a university employee, but they'll hold a scholarship for you if you choose to. And basically, the jersey you're wearing, the school is selling the naming rights to the team at that point.
I want to be real clear, Adam's comment. So you think it's legal to force people to join a union to gain employment? No, I wouldn't go that route. At the News Sentinel, I wasn't technically a member of the union, but they did have to represent me if something came up. So it's kind of like a hollow, I don't know, sort of thing. I just
yeah, what I'm saying is most of the time, Adam, like if there's no competitor in town, there will be antitrust lawsuits, and the only thing that can help you get out of that is if you're unionized. Basically the argument is, so the NFL has to have a players association at this point because there's no competition. So you can't go to the only way to get fair employment and to get, a fair shake from the NFL owners is if they're unionized, because where are you going to go? What sports are you going to play for in competition? USFL? I mean, so there's no competitor to the NFL. There's no competitor.
AF.
The what?
AF. American All-American,
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
it was, football league.
That one that Steve Spurrier coached in. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. There's no competitor in the NCAA. Now, if you guys find a competitor, then you can make the case. But if they're going to become university employees, they're almost going to have, if they're going to be employees, they're almost going to have to be unionized, or the NCAA is going to be an antitrust violation again. So, I mean, that's just going to be how it works out.
Okay. Eric, I think this is an outlier. You've got tell me how the union's faring today. It's set up for failure.
I'm not here to debate how people's thoughts are with unions. I'm saying the union is the only way around the NCAA not being in blatant violation of antitrust laws.
Yep. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios weekdays at 10 a.m. Hit that like button, please. Thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't. Coming up on the program, we'll talk some Tennessee hoops, Lady Vols, and men. Give me 2 minutes off those sports.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas. Your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing? Therapeutic? Absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7.
Like the name, but serious or something. The Dave Hooker Show with Kayla Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Caleb. The Andrej Karic loss, I think, is significant because Tennessee is replacing Cooper Mays at center as well. And Karic's set to play left guard. It looks like right guard will probably go to a transfer already. So you're looking at potentially 2 transfers at guard and then a new center, probably William Satterwhite. Now, Sham Umarov is a potential there at that guard position, but I just really question their depth now. I like Larry Johnson III, but he's a tackle. I like Lance Hurd, but he's a tackle. And I think David Sanders is going to be good out of high school, but he's a freshman. So suddenly just one guy down and this offensive line looks a lot less deep. They'll go with Pendleton. The Notre Dame transfer is a possibility. Wendell Moe from Arizona. So there are some guys there, but still not the base that you would want out of high school football recruiting.
Yeah, so I am going to do something I haven't really done before. Dave, you ready for this? I'm going to give Josh Heupel some credit for roster building and pulling a Nick Saban, which is preparing for multiple scenarios. I was questioning why they went for 2 guards in the offseason, Sam Pendleton and Wendell Moe. It's obvious now. They were prepared for this situation. I think Josh Heupel was ready for Andrej Karic to get this ruling rejected, honestly. And so now you can get Wendell Moe on one side, Sam Pendleton on the other, and I think William Satterwhite, you're right, is going to step in at center at that point. And then you're right, Sham Umarov will kind of be the guy, I guess, would you say, the guy in the background that kind of fills in at one of the guard spots.
Wait, so you don't think it'll be Satterwhite at center?
No, I think it'll be Satterwhite at center. Right. Satterwhite at center. Satterwhite at center, and then Wendell Moe and Sam Pendleton will be the 2 guards, and I think Sham Umarov will be, I guess, what you would call a utility player, just fills in wherever there's an injury.
Yeah, he's a big body, so he can play tackle as well.
Yeah, so I think he'll pull the I guess he'll be like the Ollie Lane of that situation, who was kind of a utility lineman for Tennessee throughout most of the career, throughout most of the period. Now, Vyson Lang is playing. Well, he's gone. But I'm trying to think of the other offensive guards that are in this situation. But because you're right, most of them are playing tackle.
Russell, Max Anderson, but I think he's more of a center. Bennett Warren is another one.
Max Anderson's a good one, though, actually, because that gives Tennessee a backup at center, and then that gives Sham Umarov their backup utility guard. So that's 5 guys that they could rotate in and out of the 3 spots.
Well, clearly, this is the time, right? They've got their opportunity. They've got to nail down a spot.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, this is the time to nail down a spot.
I mean, if you're Bennett Warren or you're Max Anderson or Aiden Bussell or Sham Umarov, and you don't nail down a spot by this summer, you might be on your way out the door. And they're only redshirt freshmen and sophomores, but still freshmen. But I just don't know that there's a lot of patience nowadays with the transfer portal.
No, I mean, I don't think so either. I think, and that you're right. This is absolutely the time they need to do it. I mean, at this, and honestly, this is going to put pressure on Glenn Ellerby. He's really got to show finally that he can actually develop players.
Focus. David says, I agree with Caleb. He was definitely preparing for multiple situations, but I have to say, I think he does that more often than we give him credit for. It just seems like the roster's been incredibly thin at spots over the years. Like a Cooper Mays goes down and you have a massive fall off. That's what concerns me. If you're a Tennessee fan, I would be concerned about not who they have, the 5 right now, but what happens when, not if, when one goes down, because they do on the offensive line every year. Who steps in there? Redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore?
No, you're right. But it's as you know, Dave, it's much harder to build depth than it used to be on the offensive line. And Josh Heupel already took over an incredibly thin roster when he got to Tennessee. So I think it's I don't know if he's done this as much in the past. And I'm actually going to disagree with you a little bit, David Satterfield. I'm glad you agree with me on that part, but you may have a point but to your point, David, it's possible that he's just been limited because he took over such a depleted roster. I don't think, for instance, though, I'll just take the receiver position. I don't really think he prepared for what might happen if Brew McCoy wasn't back to full strength this past year. He just didn't seem ready to address that issue because forcing Brew McCoy out there was causing so many problems throughout the year. He just wasn't able to be himself.
Well, he wanted to go really bad. He pushed himself out there. Hound Dogs of Knoxville champions look good in orange. You can pick up a Brew jersey there, hdknoxville.com. If you're a member of the channel and I'm sending out prizes today, you will get a gift certificate as a welcome present, also be eligible for weekly gifts. And we are giving away that John Henderson helmet. So help me goodness this week. Joe Newbert Collision Center, also 50 years. Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. It's joenewbertcollision.com. joenewbertcollision.com. The question you have, what if Pendleton or Moe don't pan out early? Because they had somewhat of a warm-up last September. Somewhat. I know it was Arkansas and Oklahoma, but you got Georgia this year. they not only have to be ready to go, but they've got to be ready to go like yesterday.
So that's where I think this limits Tennessee slightly because of what Josh Heupel has had to deal with. But I'll say that I think this is where, I mean, can we say this is where somewhat recruiting comes into play where, I mean, you got to hope that he's got some just in case things go wrong situation now that some of these guys work out. I mean, we're talking, you just mentioned Sham Umarov. And, we haven't even mentioned the fact that, what's his name? Let's see. Isn't Masai Reddick still with the program? And, we talked Aiden Bussell.
I don't really talk about Masai Reddick, to be honest.
Yeah, Aiden Bussell. There's Max Anderson. You bring him up.
Okay, let's do hot or cold on these guys. How about that?
All right, I'm good with that. Let's play.
Where do you stand? Hot or cold? Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Integrity matters. 50 years in East Tennessee. CityHeatandAir.com. On Off the Hook Sports.
Adam's saying we do not sub offensive linemen. Well, when one gets hurt, you do. And that's going to happen each and every year. I'm sorry. When you're in the SEC, that's just going to happen. So let me ask you about the following players. I'll give you what I'm hearing behind the scenes a little bit. William Satterwhite, I think it's pretty obvious, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, that I'm hot on him. I think he's the starter.
I am hot on him too. At center, I'm really hot on him, and I think that this is, I think this was Tennessee's plan all along to have him ready to step in for Cooper Mace.
Okay, Mo. Hey, Mo. Wendell Moe Jr. out of Arizona.
I'm hot on him.
I watched his tape. I'm cold.
Really? You think he was just a product of a system?
I think he's a dude. I think he's a dude. I don't just see the spring. I don't see that sort of thing. And then you had Sham Umarov, and we'll get to Pendleton. I am hot on Umarov. I saw him get in the game a couple of times last year. So I like Umarov. But I can't tell you much about Pendleton yet. I think he's going to be very good. He looks like a solid player. But I'm not writing off Sham Umarov just because he's a little bit younger than the transfers.
I'm a little cold on Sham Umarov because I feel like he should have seen more action to this point. Sam Pendleton, I'm hot on because, again, the only reason Sam Pendleton, people are acting like he lost his starting job last year. That's not what happened. The player that he was starting in place of was always penciled in ahead of him. That player was just hurt. So he came back and they gave the starting job back to him. It's kind of like when Brew McCoy was relegated back to backup when Cedric Tillman got healthy in 2022. It's not like Brew McCoy lost his starting job at receiver. And so I'm pretty high on Pendleton. He was blocking really well for Notre Dame based on a lot of numbers before that. So
do you have more of a problem with the talent procuration or the talent development? And that's hot or cold. And it's brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. CityHeatandAir.com.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Switch it up a little bit. Your hottest or your coldest on Tennessee's high school football recruiting or their development of talent?
Their high school football recruiting. I don't think they've gotten the right guys, but I will also say up front, I'm going to be fair real quick. When you're rebuilding a program, as Josh Heupel is, the last piece, the hardest part is to get the right offensive lineman. I mean, that is one, Dave, you know this probably better than anybody. There's probably less of a correlation between star rating and panning out on the offensive line than in any other position. It's almost the hardest to measure of any position in recruiting.
I would agree with that. That's that's why I think that Tennessee with Umarov, who I believe is a 4-star, I'm not ruling him out yet. I think he may have as much upside as Pendleton or Mo, but does that show up this year? I don't know. It really, to not have a more set plan, I have to admit I'm a little cold on Josh Heupel's offensive line progression.
On his development. I mean, I understand why you would feel that way, and I'm not necessarily hot. I mean, he still has not started for a season a offensive lineman he signed out of high school. I think out of desperation, he's taken a lot of bodies and missed. But the one thing that kind of stands out now is Addison Nichols getting the starting job at Arkansas last year.
So let's do hot or cold with these three remaining guys that David asked about. What about Max Anderson, Jesse Perry, and Bennett Warren? Are we hot or cold on them? I'm going to be honest with you. I've not heard their name and talking to people in the know, so that makes me a little cold, but I'll ask specifically about them, and I have something for you tomorrow.
I'm hot on Max Anderson, but that was because I was hot on him on the recruiting trail. I did believe in him. Cold on Jesse Perry. At this point, cold on Bennett Warren. I thought Bennett Warren was going to be a guy that could like see the field as a freshman, and the fact that he didn't kind of stands out to me a little bit. So I'm cold on him.
Well, I agree. And, you know, he's kind of like that perfect size, but I just don't know that he has that spring either. I know I've made a reference to that a couple of times. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford.
And here we go.
It was a huge waste of time, like bringing a married guy to Vegas.
Then there's this guy, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Portions of the program brought to you by the UPS Store Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated by Tennessee fans. The link right down below, the UPS Store in Hardin Valley. Caleb, I got messed up with my elements a second ago. Have we done stat of the day yet?
No, let's go ahead and roll with stat of the day.
Go. See, okay. I'm just going to have to send this board to you. Just totally past that.
You're a married guy to Vegas.
Then there's this guy, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun.
Stat of the day is what, Caleb?
We're going to talk about Tennessee basketball's win over Texas A&M in a minute, but Chaz Lanier is in Tennessee's win over A&M. He had 30 points, 8 3-pointers, and 5 rebounds on the road against an AP top 10 team. The last player to do that was Buddy Hield for Oklahoma in 2016 at #1 Kansas, but it took him 3 overtimes to do that.
I remember Buddy Hield.
I'm sorry?
I remember Buddy Hield quite
yeah.
well.
Chaz Lanier is the first player to do it in regulation since A.J. Price did it for UConn back in 2009 at #8 Marquette. So got to give Chaz Lanier some credit for stepping up in a big moment. We'll talk about that soon. But yeah, that was a pretty impressive weekend for him.
You're all about the Chaz Lanier out there being a potential superstar, being an Dalton Knecht, aren't you?
I have been. I've reset my expectations on that. I've admitted I was wrong, but I got to give him credit for how he played over the weekend.
Yep, I'm somewhere in between. Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service, automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. Go to Quality Tire Pros right down below.com, qualitytirepros.com. You will absolutely love them. Let's talk some Tennessee basketball right now, as the Vols were incredibly successful over the weekend, both on the men's and women's side. We'll have that preview of Tennessee's running backs tomorrow. But first, it is time for What the H?
What the H?
Wow, I never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Okay, on my rundown, Caleb, you said the Lady Vols got an ugly win. Wait, this team is not capable of getting an ugly win yet. Because have you seen Kim Caldwell? No, I'm kidding. But you have a scenario where this team is overachieving. So I don't see how any win could be ugly, especially in the SEC.
Oh, this team is overachieving, but Florida's not a good basketball team. The SEC on the women's side is not as deep as the SEC on the men's side. Florida is a 500 team, and Tennessee went on the road to face them. So, I mean, it's a road win in the SEC, so don't complain too much. But Tennessee had a really bad start, and this has been a problem with them under Kim Caldwell is they've had really bad starts, and they've had to fight back a lot of times. Now they did because they had a heck of a third quarter, winning 37-20. But, yeah, no, they played really, really, really ugly in the first half. And the only thing that saved them in this game, Dave, they won 86-78, was that Florida went 2 of 17 from 3. But, Dave, that should give you an idea of how ugly this game was. Florida scored 78 points despite going 2 of 17 from 3. That shouldn't be happening with Tennessee with this team.
Let's set this up as a poll question. So you think it's an ugly win. I don't think that's entirely fair, but let's work on that premise. And that is, it's an ugly win. Well, do you worry that Tennessee's basketball team, the Lady Vols, may be hitting a wall? And I've seen a lot of teams do this under a first-year coach, or freshmen do this a lot as well. And you just kind of hit a wall roundabout late February, and you're not typically the same team again. Do you worry about that? The Lady Vols have hit a wall.
No, I think that they are. And I know where you're going with that because I remember Bruce Pearl's very first team. They just weren't there very deep. They couldn't go. So they did hit a wall because he got them into the top 10, but he was only running 7 or 8 guys, and they were just getting to. They hit a wall. I'm not going to say that for this team. I think honestly, this team is like a lot of teams that they just need to learn how to handle success a little bit. I mean, how many teams have you covered, Dave, that like they're not used to winning, and then the minute they start having success, they just don't handle it that well because they're not used to it?
Quite a few. A lot of Jerry Green teams in there.
Oh my gosh. Well, the funny thing is they were used to winning, and they still couldn't handle success. So, yeah, I mean, like, by the way, did I tell you that I came across like SI previews like from the 90s and early 2000s of Tennessee basketball teams, and like nobody gave Jerry Green credit for the excitement for the program getting better. All they talked about was how lazy Tennessee was on defense every year. They're like, if Tennessee doesn't stop being lazy on defense, they'll never take another step. But yeah, this team, I think that they.
Do you remember when he used to prop up Vincent Yarbrough? Vincent Yarbrough is not a good on-ball defender, but he led the SEC one year in steals. But it's because he was laying back in passing lanes.
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's kind of funny though.
It's not a good. We'll stick with the Lady Vols here, but I think that this type of win can be valuable. You're going to have to probably win a game ugly in the NCAA tournament. I think this can be valuable. I think you're being a little bit too critical.
Oh, I'm not saying it's not valuable. I wouldn't worry about them hitting. That's what I'm saying. I'm not worried about them hitting a wall. I just think they took the day off, and they got to be, they had that big top 25 win over Alabama at home last Thursday. They're reaching the they're in the top 15. There's a lot of excitement over what they're doing, and they've been playing much better basketball really since their loss to South Carolina. They've really turned things around, winning at Missouri and then beating UConn. They almost beating LSU at LSU, and then handling Auburn, Ole Miss, and Alabama the way they have. They've been playing so well. This was the first game where I'd say since the South Carolina loss, this is the first game where they underachieved in a game where they didn't play as well as they should have. And I mean, again, Kim Caldwell was saying the same thing. And, look, let's give her credit. She's not letting her team off the hook either, and she shouldn't. But she's giving, but at the same time, yeah, it's a road win in the SEC. You can't complain about that. Delaysia Cooper came away with 18 points, 5 rebounds. Samara Spencer had a double-double with 11 points and 11 rebounds. Alyssa Latham hit 2 threes off the bench. Ruby Whitehorn scored 10 points off the bench. And Jewel Spear hit 10 points, even though she didn't shoot the ball well. I think there was just a level of frustration that I think Tennessee's defense could have been much, much better in this game. And it's funny you talk about playing the passing leagues going for the steals. Tennessee gambled on a lot in this game, and they actually didn't come away with a lot. They only had 8 steals, which is not their standard, and forced 21 turnovers. But Florida got past them a lot of times on this, and their half-court defense just wasn't up to snuff. So I think that I think they're fine. I just think that they took the first half of this game off.
Unsung said, why is Dave getting crazy eyes this morning? I don't know. Caleb's giving me crazy eyes. He just thinks everything I say is crazy. Are you talking about my eyes? What are the Vols seed now, third or fourth?
Ooh, right now they're fourth probably. If I go to the women's basketball net rankings and I'm pulling those up now, they're third. I think they're third because right now they're 11th in the net rankings. And I mean, let's just call it what it is. The brand of Tennessee, the selection committee is going to lean in their favor if they can.
Well, yeah, it's because they're Tennessee, and Tennessee always got a seed higher when the Lady Vols were
always.
I mean, they'd get a 1 when you thought they were going to get a 2 when you thought they would get a 3. I think that'll be the case this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they got a 2, but I think they'll definitely get a 3.
Yeah, they're going to get a 3. I mean, there was one year, Holly Warlicks last year, where they got into the NCAA tournament and did not deserve to get into the NCAA tournament. But there was just, the concept of we can't not put Tennessee in the women's NCAA basketball tournament. So yeah, they'll get the 3. Yeah, I would too.
I'm not worried about hitting a wall. Basketball is a long season. Sooner or later, you're going to have a bad game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think they took the half off the same way Tennessee basketball before we're going to talk Texas A&M, but a week ago before the Texas A&M game, they took the game off against Vanderbilt at home, and they had to fight to come back to win, which they shouldn't have had to do. But sometimes you take a game off. This was sandwiched between 2 top 25 teams in Alabama and Kentucky. It was a trap game. I mean, there's a one. It reminded me of. All right, Dave. Here's a game. You may not remember this game, but I'm going to see if you do. Do you remember 2003 when Tennessee beat Alabama in 5 overtimes?
Yes.
Do you remember that same year? 2 weeks later, they went and beat Miami in Miami. That was the same year.
Yes.
Do you remember the game in between those 2 games?
No.
It was their homecoming game against Duke, and it was the ugliest win. They were tied against Duke at halftime, and this isn't David Cutcliffe's Duke. This was like they were going 0-12 every year, Duke. And they were tied at 6 at halftime, and then they had to turn it on, and they won like 23-6. It was a really ugly win. But they were just coming off an emotional 5 overtime win, and they were about to face Miami the next week. How do you get up to play Duke in that situation?
I don't know. I will tell you this, that I think that Tennessee is closer than you might think to being a blue blood. I really feel like the next coach they get is going to win a championship. I don't know if it's Rick Barnes or not. But
on the men's side.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I switched it up for you. I think Kim Caldwell will have great success at Tennessee. I think she'll win multiple championships.
Well, and that's the other reason they're going to lean towards Tennessee in the seeding. Not only is Tennessee the brand strong, but the style of play is what they want to promote more than anything else. So they're going to put that very high up in there. So yeah, I think Tennessee I think the Lady Vols do get a 3 seed. And look, the thing about Kim Caldwell is this depth does help. I don't know your thoughts on it, Dave. Like, does this 10-player rotation, does that level of extra depth really help in tournament time, or is it really just a 5-on-5 game at that point?
Oh, I definitely think it helps.
Yeah, I think it does help.
The 10 deep, yeah, I think you're less likely to hit a wall. I also think, though, that more than that, it's the fact that this team is led by upperclassmen, and they don't typically hit a wall. That's why I was really surprised to see the Florida game over the weekend. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, but again, I think they're riding a bit of it was just a trap game. It's a road game against a 500 SEC team sandwiched between 2 top 25 teams. And I just think they played a little ugly basketball, just a really ugly second quarter for the most part. And
hey, Adam's throwing this out there. If White makes the hire, he'll become a blue blood. Men's basketball is White's sport, and he makes great hires everywhere. But I wouldn't just say that you should move on from Rick Barnes, who arguably is, I know that comes with a glass ceiling, but is doing his best coaching right now in his career.
Yeah, I wouldn't move on from Rick Barnes. I think he's got Tennessee right where you want him. White's best sport actually is women's basketball with hires, which should make Tennessee happy. Go back and look at Danny White's hires in women's basketball. Dating back to his very first hire ever was at Buffalo. He hired Felicia Leggett-Jack, who had gotten fired by Indiana and was just completely left for dead as a coach. And somehow he saw something in her that no one else did, and he hired her, which is a very unpopular hire, and she became a splash success for Buffalo, and now she's at Syracuse. So I don't know how White is so good at doing it, but he is. And so, look, that's why I do believe in the Kim Caldwell hire. strongly, and she's shown it so far.
The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, Off the Hook Sports. Give me 2 minutes, then we'll talk to men on the flip side. As with Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
A guy with a lot of jobs, but this one is the most important.
This is not government work. As such, I treat it with care and attention.
Until someone else calls. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Caleb, what's your biggest gripe with Rick Barnes? Is it that he is too hard on his players and they tend to wilt? Or is it X's and O's in the NCAA tournament where he's tended to wilt?
It's not X's and O's. It's yeah, I think it's his grinding. I think he grinds really, really, really hard. He doesn't treat the basketball season as a marathon. He treats every game as a sprint. Timothy, I get your point. I guess you're talking about the Lady Vols. I'm not knocking the ugly win. I understand why it was an ugly win, but it was an ugly win. Like, I mean, that doesn't change the fact that it was an ugly win.
Yeah. Barnes, to me, is too far down the road to ever change his mind, right? He's 70, 71 years old.
Yeah. Okay. Do you know the Vince Vaughn cameo in Rudy?
Yes.
Where he's like,
wasn't really a cameo. He was just another
actor. Where Vince Vaughn's like, last practice of the season, and this a-hole's treating it like it's the effing Super Bowl. And then the coach, I guess, which Ace Parzican at the time was like, you just summed up your whole career if you had half the heart Rudy did. Yeah, praising Rudy for playing every play like the Super Bowl. Now, realistically, you shouldn't take every practice like the Super Bowl, right? That's going to literally drain you. Rick Barnes wants you to take every single play like it's the final shot of the game. And
yeah, if you're out there doing that stuff on a Friday afternoon walkthrough, somebody's going to knock that ever-living fire out of you.
Yeah. Yeah, and Rick Barnes expects his players to do that. Now, it's also a principle. Here's the thing with Rick Barnes. He's very much, and I'm going to give you 2 names, Dave. He's the basketball version of Mark Richt and David Cutcliffe, which is Rick Barnes prioritizes developing his players over anything else, developing them as people. And I mean developing them as basketball players. So that's why you see them do so well in the NBA a lot of times. is particularly the 3-year guys. I mean, a guy like Grant Williams never should have been an NBA player, but Rick Barnes developed him and he became one because of Rick Barnes' coaching. So
now somebody put in there on a message board, I couldn't find it, but supposedly Grant Williams has said publicly that Rick Barnes is too hard on his players.
Oh, Rick Williams has told the story a couple of times actually about how Rick Barnes, this was a couple years ago, has just like ran the hell out of them in practice sometimes. So yeah, I've heard those stories before. And also he basically kind of maybe all but weight shamed Admiral Schofield, but not really. He was just saying you got to trim way down if you're going to play in this system.
Yes, the show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast from Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Other than Grant, who do you think that Barnes has done the greatest job with while at Tennessee? I don't think there's a close second.
No, I don't think.
I guess you could say Dalton Knecht, but that was more about talent to me last year.
Yeah, Dalton buying in helped a lot. If I'm going to say, what's funny is before he bolted like a child, I would have said Jonas Adu was going to be his greatest development story. But without Jonas Adu, we're going to talk about him in a second when we talk about this, but we could maybe say Zakai Ziegler, interestingly enough. But other than Grant Williams,
a high energy guy, Jim Rat.
I'll say it, Admiral Schofield. Admiral Schofield. He did an amazing job with Admiral Schofield. That guy should.
Grant?
No, you said other than Grant.
Okay.
Yeah, Admiral Schofield's my guy, who is also on that same team.
Why wouldn't you go Zakai Ziegler?
I think for Zakai Ziegler, it's just how Zakai Ziegler plays. I think Zakai Ziegler literally plays in Rick Barnes' image, which is we talk about going hard. Zakai Ziegler is Rudy. Okay, he goes 110% every single play.
Yep. David said Zakai is second. I agree with that. Instead of Schofield, I'm going to go with Zakai. Now, David also says, we went out and beat Bama. We deserve a number 1 seed. Do you agree? What are you hearing in terms of seeding?
Yes, I do. I don't know if that's possible, but I do. Let's dive in and talk about the Texas A&M game over the weekend.
Okay.
And what happened. So for the Tennessee got their biggest win over the weekend by beating Texas A&M, who was number 7. They beat him 77-69 on the road. 2 big takeaways from this game. One, we got to give Chaz Lanier some credit, Dave. He came through in the clutch. He dropped 30 points, like I said, and on the road, Texas A&M ties it up at 57 with 5 minutes to go. Chaz Lanier hits a key 3 close to the 4-minute mark to build it to 60-57. But then what happens? You ready for this? At 60-50, Texas A&M then cuts it to 60-59. Zakai Ziegler is then in on the next 13 points Tennessee scores in the final 3 minutes. So he dishes 2 passes to Jordan Gainey, who hits 2 threes. He makes 4 free throws. And then with Texas A&M making it close late with 21 seconds left, Zakai Ziegler hits an incredible 3 that ices the game with 21 seconds to give them a 71-69 lead. I gotta show you the shot again. I'm sure we all saw it, but like, Dave, this is a Chris Lofton type of shot. I mean, just look at this. Look at this dagger that he throws. I mean, this is. Tell me this isn't shades of Chris Lofton right here.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Like
Winthrop shot falling out of bounds.
Yeah, I mean. And it leads me to believe, even though Chaz Lanier came through in the clutch, let's be honest. Zakai Ziegler finished with 16 points, by the way. Rick Barnes turns to Zakai Ziegler in crunch time more than anybody else. He wants Zakai Ziegler to take over the game.
No, he did in that Mississippi State game that I went to. Was it Mississippi State?
Yeah, Mississippi State.
Hit a clutch 3.
He called Zakai Ziegler for the game-tying 3 at Auburn.
So where is Zakai Ziegler a most important players on this team? Is he number 1? Because then I'm going to ask you a follow-up.
I think just for scoring purposes, Chaz Lanier is still number 1. I mean, there's still the 38 minutes of a game. It's just Zakai for the last 2 minutes.
Okay. I think Ziegler's the most important player, but I don't think he's anywhere close to being one of the top talents on the team. So is that what Tennessee fans should expect, to get an overachiever via Rick Barnes? Now, David says, and I want to address this. ZZ was criminally underrated, under-recruited. Remember, Kennedy Chandler was the golden boy recruit in his class. Well, he was. I remember everybody went crazy about Kennedy Chandler. What's he doing nowadays?
Well, he shouldn't have left early for the NBA. He's in the G League right now, and he needed to stay another year to develop under Bonds. He's your classic 5-star that left too early, the one and dones. I think 5-stars really underrate the value of playing a couple of years under a guy like Rick Barnes, who can really develop you for the NBA if you stay another year. And I think that Kennedy Chandler made that mistake, but I understand it. You got to go get your money, and sometimes you make that mistake. But yeah, Zakai was criminally underrated, and people preferred him to Kennedy Chandler during that year. I mean, look, Zakai Ziegler is, none of us are here to bash him. I mean, he is an overachiever. I mean, he goes 130. I mean, I don't even want to say 110. He goes 150% every time. He is like the anti-player from Jerry Green teams, honestly.
So Tennessee has 4 games remaining. Tuesday night, it'll be LSU. And then Saturday, it'll be Alabama, as obviously Alabama's pretty darn good. Ole Miss, number 5, Ole Miss, March the 5th. South Carolina, March the 8th. And then comes the SEC tournament where Caleb's going to tell everybody to lay down.
Yes, their goal should be to win 3 of 4. I think they can get Alabama.
The final games, not the SEC tournament games. You think they should just lay down in that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just lay down the SEC tournament. It's not going to, no, here's what I mean. Do what you did last year. You don't have to throw the game, but just jack a bunch of threes. And if they go in and you advance, they go in. But don't try to run your offense and exert energy doing that. Just shoot threes the whole game. Just jack threes, jack 50 threes up, and call it a day.
Derek says ZZ the best true point guard ever at Tennessee. I'd say so. I got to go Tony the Wizard White, but Derek, I think I'm a little bit older than you.
Well, so okay, true. Okay, Zakai Ziegler, he's the hardest true point guard to me was CJ Watson. That was the most true point guard I think I've ever seen play at Tennessee. And if CJ Watson didn't have to labor under Buzz Peterson for 3 years,
he hated that dude.
Oh, his family hated that dude. I actually met his uncle at a Grizzly game one time when he was playing for Golden State, and they were like, they did not. Buzz tried to force so much on CJ Watson that wasn't in his nature. That, I mean, I nobody benefited more from Bruce Pearl than CJ Watson that 1 year he got to play under Bruce Pearl.
Oh, I think CJ would have been set up for tremendous success had he played under Pearl a little bit longer. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford.
All right, Caleb, let me ask you this. Zakai Ziegler, where would he rank among top point guards in Tennessee basketball history? I'm going to put him above Tony Harris because Tony never could figure out if he was a 1 or a 2, and Jerry Green couldn't help him. And then I'm going to say the one that I've seen, the 2 actually, would be CJ number 1. I don't know. I might have Tony White number 1 just because I remember watching him. He was my favorite player.
I thought he was a scoring guard. Was he a point guard?
He had the ball a lot. So I probably a little bit the same with Tony Harris, probably a little in between.
Yeah, kind of like, I mean, I know Ernie Grunfeld was a point forward. He technically didn't play point guard, but kind of the offense ran through him when Bernard King was the star during those times. It was kind of like he played the Scottie Pippen role, I think, a lot of times where he would distribute. So I can't really go with him. I mean, I think you're right. I think CJ definitely is on that list. We're talking.
I got one. 1, 2, 3, 4 beers puts it out there. How often does a 5'9" guy win Defensive Player of the Year? So I'll ask you that. What would you rather happen? Zakai win Defensive Player of the Year or Tennessee get a 1 seed? Because Caleb's made the suggestion that Tennessee should get a 2 seed. And let's throw that out there because I think some people would root for Zakai getting a little bit of love from the coaches' media.
Okay, but I'm not saying they'd rather get a 2 seed. I said the location is more important than the seeding. And David Speaks says that Johnny Darden was number 1 in assist. But David, Darden was passing the ball to Bernard King and Ernie Grunfeld. I could have been number 1 in assist, honestly. Yeah. So I don't think there was much talent in that, quite honestly. I mean, I think Zakai, my biggest hope for Zakai, and I don't think it's going to happen, and I hate that it's not going to happen, but like, has there ever been a player you would root for to get an NBA contract more than Zakai Ziegler, even though he's not going to get one?
It's not even within 6 inches.
No, it's not.
I mean, he's 5'9", like a legit 5'9",
and he's not quick enough at 5'9" either. He's quick for the SEC. Like, if you're 5'9" in the NBA, you got to be like really, 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 really quick.
Who was the guy that his name was Pee Wee? He played basketball. Do you remember him? No, he played football. He played football for Tennessee. And it was weird because his name was Pee Wee, accurately so. He was about 5'8", 5'9", and he was dating Michelle Snow, who was like 6'7".
Pee Wee Gash?
I think so, yeah. But
Yeah,
that
he played
was
basketball,
that was an odd-looking couple to be together because one was literally the man was below Michelle Snow's waist. It was like a circus. I mean, it's just very odd the difference in height.
I mean, you know, if Candace Parker ever wanted to give me a call, I'd probably be below her waist, but I wouldn't care. But
Show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. For Caleb Calhoun, we'll see you at 10 a.m. each and every weekday. Hit that like and subscribe button. We appreciate that. Be a member of the channel, and just for $4.99, you'll get an introductory pass, a welcome pass to Hound Dogs of Knoxville. You can spend some money on my dime. How about that? For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. The show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.